morning again. Peace and good morning again. Hope all is well for you this morning. Hold on, I'm setting up my mic. I'm doing this on Instagram and on my other streaming platforms. Getting the mic right. I'm testing my hype mic with my phone to see if I get better sounding audio on Instagram. So what I'm getting on for this morning, something I've been meaning to do for a few weeks, just because I thought it was an interesting opportunity to do something to create a testimonial, because I'm one who's in need of testimonials from time to time, and I see that someone that's at least related to a friend is in need of a testimonial, and I think it's a good opportunity to explore some of my own experiences and thoughts, especially because while trying to fulfill the needs of this testimonial last night, I had some revelations or realizations. Maybe they're called epiphanies, I don't know. But I'm gonna let you guys see what this is first. We'll talk about what, and then go into the other details. So, speech from Arrested Development had this request. Test. Make sure my mic's on. Okay, cool. Mic looks like it's still on. So here's Speech's request, and after it, I'll talk about it some more. Actually, let's read his caption first. So his caption on this post says, "Former and present members interviewed for upcoming Arrested Development documentary. We love for our fans to video phone about an AD song, group member, or concert involving AD. What moved you and why? Send that to Mike@speechmusic.com. He wants it horizontal, please. So, landscape, not the way that you see it on Instagram and TikTok, but the way that you see things on YouTube, not shorts. So let's play his appeal or his request. Hold on. See, here we go. I'm gonna turn off my mic so that you guys can hear this, because I want to make sure that it plays for Instagram and for you guys. So it's gonna come out of my speakers, and I gotta mute my mic in order for that to come through here on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that. So bear with me. Hopefully I can remember to turn my mic back on after, since that's been such a struggle lately.
What's up, fam? We sent out a little request for people to join us for this Arrested Development documentary, and we've gotten incredible response, especially for the people coming to meet in person. We're packed out in Atlanta. We're going to do some other cities too, and that's going to be incredible. But we only got one response for people to send in a self-tape. Something, just you with your phone talking about a certain song that you really love. I think this would be a very important part of the documentary for people that are fans of music, fans of the group, friends of the group, to share, in particular, the old stuff, but also the new stuff. So any album from our catalog, if y'all could share, that would be dope. It's highly appreciated. It doesn't have to be anything a minute long, 3 minutes, whatever. Anyway, appreciate it. Peace.
back this time. So I don't know if that was weird for you on the internet, but it definitely sounded weird for me. Um, not his request, but the audio, because I don't have the technicals figured out. It had this weird effect on here. It's probably routing out through the mic or through the speakers and coming back, giving feedback by coming back into the mic. I'll figure all that out one day. This is getting it together. I'm learning this stuff live. Um, so hearing his request, the most important thing to me was to give an honest, genuine assessment and honest, genuine feedback. And that's part of what took me so long, because this request is weeks old. Um, Fortunately, I saw that he's still looking for contributions. I looked in the comments and saw that as of last week, he still urged somebody to send one. So I figure, why not do the exercise, right? So what I did was I went back and played the one album I hadn't played from their most recent run. And I played that one because I know what brought me in as an AD fan was the last album, For the FKN Love. So I wanted to play the one before that because I know Configure had co-executive producer credits on both of these albums, and since I like this last one, I figured there's probably a chance I'd like the one before that as well. So I started playing that one last night, and I've been playing it off and on through last night and this morning. I've already played For the FKN Love a bunch of times. But before I get into thoughts about those, I wanted to speak about why it is that I'm just becoming an Arrested Development fan. Because that's it's a much more personal. I realize it's a much more personal story than I'd give myself credit for. I didn't think I was qualified to speak on this because I wasn't a fan all these years, and I don't necessarily have a favorite song yet. I have songs that I've learned to love from the albums, but I don't really have a favorite song, right? But I have songs that have spoken to me, and I'll get into that toward the end, I guess. But I remember when I first heard Arrested Development. It was back in high school, probably played over the lunchroom radio station. We had a little thing where people could go into a little cubby and run like a little high school radio station and play music, and that music would be broadcast into the lunchrooms on our lunch breaks. And I remember hearing Tennessee and Everyday People on those speakers. I remember hearing it at house parties or parties back in high school and stuff too. But I only remember, and I don't even remember listening to it, but I know I listened to the album at least once back then. But I didn't keep playing it. And I think, after doing that research or that introspection last night as I was listening, I was asking myself, well, why didn't I keep playing it? And I realized it was because my musical tastes back in high school were yet another thing that put me in a sort of outcast category. What I mean by that, for example, I loved Kumo D and preferred him over Dougie Fresh, for example, when I first moved to Maryland. That was the first time I got into a musical debate, was Kumo D versus Dougie Fresh. And I stood alone in preferring Kumo D. And I couldn't tell you why I preferred him over Dougie. I just know I stood alone on that. I went through a number of debates back then and, walked on, whatever. But it was when I became a Tribe Called Quest fan. They're my favorite group of all time, probably. Most likely, they're my favorite hip-hop group of all time. And largely because of Q-Tip. Probably Ali, Fife, they have contributions, obviously, but Tip was my guy. I was a big fan of Tribe, and I remember getting the business for being a Tribe fan, especially because when they came out, when they were hitting, that's when it wasn't called gangster rap back then, but the more hardcore hip hop was getting more attention and more love, at least where I lived. So I had to enjoy my music by myself. If I wanted to go hang out and I wanted to socialize, I had to listen to that stuff. Nobody wanted to hear Tribe. Nobody wanted to hear what I loved. And I was at that stage of development where I was trying to learn how to socialize because I was a recluse before then. I was the kid who normally stayed inside, didn't really hang out much because I didn't have much in common with the people I would hang out with most of the time. So I'd always be like, all right, well, we're out here doing this, but we're not doing anything that I'm really interested in. So in order to be more social, because back at that age, you want to chase girls, for example, your hormones are kicking. I knew I had to be more social, or I felt I had to be more social at that time in order to get the young ladies that I was interested in. And in order to not feel so alone and not to be alone all the time. So that didn't leave room for listening to the music I enjoyed. So I didn't get time to explore music I enjoyed much. And I knew Arrested Development would land right there in that same pocket as Tribe. And not that their music is the same in any way, shape, or form. That music is drastically different, right? But they were both alternatives to hardcore hip hop. So I didn't have the bandwidth, and I was probably trying not to like any more different music at that time or spend too much time with too much different music because I was trying to figure out ways to subconsciously was trying to figure out ways to assimilate better, to stop being the sore thumb, to stop sticking out, and to find a way to fit in with these social groups I was trying to get in with. So Arrested Development just didn't fit on my listening platter, especially when I only had but so much room for the type of music I loved, like the Tribe, the De La Soul, the Jungle Brothers, Native Tongues type of music. So in order for me to add a new group to my rotation, Brand Nubian, in order to add a new group to my rotation would mean I'd have to spend less time listening to what I already loved. And I was still exploring what I already loved. So Arrested Development just didn't fit on my platter, on my listening platter. Fast forward all these years, I mean, since they didn't fit back then, they never got a chance to kind of get a hook in me. And so I never really checked for them. I never checked for speech, never checked for Arrested Development because I was busy checking for the artists that I was already invested in. Then come back to 2021 and I see my man Zoe, Kareem, from Grayskull. He posts about the Arrested Development album. I know he loves a lot of music, a lot of the same music I love. We've got very similar taste in a lot of ways. Or we did, at least at that time. I don't know, where we stand now as far as our taste, but I'm sure we align on a lot of areas still, especially when it comes to classic artists. So I was like, yo, Kareem likes this. Let me go give it a listen. I gave it a listen. I love the album For the FK in Love. The production especially. I'm a person who I don't hear lyrics and the MCs often anymore until I've listened a few times. It takes really good, solid production for me to stick around and dig into a project and really listen to it in depth. The beats on For the FK in Love made me encouraged and made me want to keep pushing play. And there were very few albums around that time that had me interested like that in that because most of the music I'd heard seemed like a variation of something I'd already heard before. Maybe it had newer twists here and there, but I was listening to all types of stuff, including the Griseldas, the J. Coles, the Kendricks. I had a mixture along with stuff from the back catalog and then my own music, which meant for me, when it comes to working on my own music, I don't like listening to too much other music when I'm in the process of creating. And Grayskull was just coming together. So I didn't have much bandwidth to be listening to other people's music if I was trying to sculpt and form our sound. And I wanted to make sure that our sound didn't have other people's present sounds seeping in. I didn't want to sound like anybody. I didn't want to get influenced by anything other than what was inside of my soul and what I saw in the artists that I was working with, the grade school members. But yeah, so I ended up loving the album, listened to it quite a bit during that time period, to the point that I don't have it down here. It's upstairs. But to the point that I even bought the wax, and I haven't bought anybody's wax. I partially bought the wax because of how engaging Configure is. Like you know how they say people buy from people they like. I like the dude. He was very engaging. He was interactive. His replies and comments and engagement on social media was meaningful. It wasn't just a little emoji here and there. It wasn't just little one-liners. Like he really took the time to respond in full, and I appreciate that about anybody because the reason I use social media is to create meaningful connections with people. Um, I don't really engage for likes and follower accounts. Like I am now engaging for for business purposes to find people who are interested in my services, but I don't want a whole bunch of empty follows. I want people who are engaged or interested in the services that I provide. Um, and people who resonate and rock with me as a human being, and that I can resonate and rock with as human beings so that we can build friendships, whatever. So that compelled me to that friendship that was developing with Configure compelled me to ask him to come on the Grace Gold podcast, which he obliged happily. We had a great long conversation. We dropped the episodes back in December. Um, he was actually our feature for the whole month of December, pretty much. We also had a Twitter space with him in December to celebrate that release of those episodes, which had been backed up since last April. So when Speech put out this request for feedback, and Configure told us, we were the first that he told it, I believe, that they were working on the third album in their series together. I was like, yo, I'd like to contribute to that because yeah, Configure's a good dude, and I like what Arrested Development is doing with him. I'm like I say, I'm actually a fan of the group at this point. So, and I became a fan through songs like "Thank You." I believe that's the one with Moni Love on it, off of For the FK and Love. Let me look up the track list while I do that. Um, Songs like "Thank You" spoke to me. There were a lot of songs on that album, to be honest. Um, Pulling it up on the Googling it. Yeah. Thank You made a big impression. Vibe with Big Daddy Kane was dope. The joint with Master Ace, I remember, was dope. I'm sure there's a bunch of them. I don't remember, and I haven't listened to it in a couple months, honestly. I wanted to listen to it before I got back on and did this, but I don't know where they are time-wise in their schedule. So I want to try and provide some feedback before, they no longer need submissions. But I remember liking a lot from this album. I don't remember feeling like I had to fast forward back when I listened to it. We'll see on my next listen. I'm sure I'm going to listen a little bit more, but limited because I'm in the midst of needing to provide some production for a few other people, and I don't want to ingest this sound and have it influence me when I get back on those pads. But yeah, Thank You really hit me hard because one, it was the first time I'd heard one of my favorite MCs of all time, Moni Love. Because as I said before, I was a Native Tongues fan back in high school. I was a junkie. So this gave me my tie and my connection from Arrested Development to Native Tongues. And I was just in love with Moni Love too. I was in love with her back in high school, and she's still one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen on the planet, man. And her vibe is so dope because she's a hip hopper. And when I heard the verses and the bars were real bars, they weren't just, oh, I'm an old head trying to keep up still, or trying to just spit something just because somebody asked me to spit something. Like, she took time and put energy and heart into those bars and into her cadences and delivery. I was like, yo, once again, I was excited to be hearing Moni again and to see that connection between them. But I also loved the production, and I loved hearing that Speech was actually an MC. I didn't know he was an MC before. I didn't even look at him as an MC because of hearing songs like Tennessee and Everyday People. Those are more sing-songy songs. So just looked at him as a rapper. I make a distinction between rappers and MCs. A rapper is somebody who, in my opinion, listens to, well, just makes music where they do the act of rap. Whereas an MC is somebody who loves the art of rapping, but also loves the culture. So they incorporate and show respect and reverence for the culture in their raps in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the amount of time and effort they put into making themselves unique and their music unique, or they're blatantly saying and talking about the culture. And there are other reasons, I'm sure, too. But this album taught me to respect speech as an MC. So I guess if I'm giving a testimony about anything related to Arrested Development, it's one that I now know speech as an MC, and I respect and appreciate him thanks to songs like Thank You and the For the FKN Love album. And also, because he asked for this testimonial, I got to do a little bit of introspection and look back and learn about myself and how I tried to conform to fit the spaces and rooms that I was in. And as a result, my musical palette suffered. And not only my musical palette, but my own music suffered because I was around and being influenced by a bunch of music that wasn't necessarily all representative of my musical palette. And I think most artists want to be able to put out music that represents, you know, the love for all forms of art that they love themselves. And I was limiting the amount of love I was giving to the music that I loved because I was learning to be a social listener. But yeah, man, that's it. I don't want to take too much more time with this. I just want to make sure I gave the testimonial. I urge anybody else who has some sort of experience or thoughts or insight on Arrested Development to give their opinions via a horizontal video like this and to submit them to speech, or actually submit them to mike@speechmusic.com. And yeah, one more thing that influenced me too to like really take Arrested Development more seriously. That's Sheed, One to Dial from Grayskull. After I checked the album, after we had, just before we had Configure on, maybe even on Configure's episode, I heard Sheed like emphatically expressing how much he respected speech as an MC. And Sheed, if you know Sheed, he's very critical. He has a narrow band within which you can walk if you want to be considered an MC or good music or hip hop in his eyes. So the cosigns from Zoe, Kareem, Muse, Zoe the instrument being, and One to Dial of the Black Mavericks, Sheed, he's also of Grayskull. Both Grayskull members played a big role in why I gave Arrested Development more of my time and attention. And I thank them both for turning me on to it, man. I appreciate that. And I appreciate AD for like really showing love and reverence for the culture of hip hop, because I always say hip hop saved me. It played a big role in me becoming who I am today and being able to chase and pursue my passions and dreams, and me maintaining some connection and love for my culture and learning about my culture. So yeah, my testimonial, Arrested Development, AD. Peace, y'all have a good one.